are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case is a solved one about a wife who pushed her husband out of the 25th floor window. This is a case that will confuse you, anger you, and leave you speechless. You'll think that you have all of the answers, and then you'll start to question yourself again. It's one of those that are technically solved, yet it's never that simple. I also want to say thank you to every single one of you who has been buying the merch. I am wearing a piece of it today, and I'm just so grateful that you guys want to support me and want to wear something that embodies our community. Thank you so much for all of your support with the merch, and if you can't buy the merch, that's completely fine. Your support on this channel is truly, truly enough. But let's go ahead and get back to the story. So this was 2011 in Oklahoma, and the Hilberling family lived in Tulsa. This was 23-year-old Joshua and 19-year-old Amber, who had been married for about a year, since July 30th of 2010. They had actually met at a Halloween party and began to be friends after that. However, it soon turned into much more. You see, Joshua actually took Amber to a park where they learned how to dance together. Amber said she didn't know how to, and so Joshua actually put her on his feet, kind of like how a dad would do to their little child, and he taught her how to dance that way. And they kind of fell in love as they swayed together in this park. Amber told everyone that she was marrying the man of her dreams, and Joshua was said to be just a gift. And he really had a love for everything because he was known to be such a sweet boy, and he would help others more than even himself. He often kind of neglected himself while helping others, but he had the best smile and the wittiest sense of humor, and his family said that they couldn't ask for a better son or friend. At this point, Joshua and Amber lived together at the University Club Tower in apartment 2509. It was now the 8th tallest building in this city. It was also shaped as a cylinder, and there were 32 floors with apartments going all the way up. Each apartment also had a view of the downtown area from anywhere in the building because there were so many windows. Now, Amber's mother was actually the one to set the couple up with an apartment here because they had been living with her, and she decided that they needed their own place, and so they got them into these apartments. You see, Josh had been in the Air Force prior to this, and Amber was kind of going everywhere with him, being stationed wherever he was, and in fact that's why they were said to have a quick wedding, because Amber wanted to be able to stay at the on-base housing that only wives could stay at. But at this point, Joshua was out of the Air Force, so they didn't have to be on base anymore, so they had gone home to Tulsa and moved in with the parents before they moved into their own place. Because at this point, Amber was also 7 months pregnant with their son. And the only problem was that there was a big problem. This relationship was not sunshine and rainbows. Not even close. You see, on June 7th at 4:09 p.m., a witness called 911 saying that he was sitting outside for a smoke break near the University Club Tower when he saw something horrific, something he didn't even want to believe himself, because he saw someone falling from the building. He believed this was from about the 17th floor. Unfortunately, it was even higher than that. He said he heard the glass break, and then this person landed on a roof of a garage that was farther up from the ground, but still, he had fallen very far and very fast. And when the paramedics arrived at the scene, it was too late. This person was DOA. Now, he had multiple broken bones and wounds that would have made it impossible for him to survive. He was face down and his body was crumpled against the roof. However, at the same time, a woman was basically leaning over his body, sobbing and holding him, rolling him over, crying on top of him, holding his face, and asking the paramedics to bring him back to life. They quickly noticed she was also very pregnant. This was none other than Amber Hilberling and her now deceased husband, Joshua. But how had his wife made it to him before even the police had? Well, there was one man who could tell investigators exactly what happened leading up to this moment, or at least what he had seen. You see, the same day that this had occurred, a maintenance worker had been called from the apartment buildings and called to room 2509. This was to fix a broken window. He had gone in because they had called saying that there was a very small window in the bedroom that needed fixing. It was also the same window that would lead to their patio or balcony. And so he said that he went into this apartment and he found Amber and Joshua, and they appeared to kind of be upset with each other the whole time. They were both in the living room, and so he went to work. He had to go out on this balcony to fix the window, to measure it, and so that's where he was. He couldn't really hear much happening inside, but that is when he heard a crash, and he definitely heard this crash. And then he saw Joshua's body leaving the building. Another window had been broken from the same apartment building, except this time it was in the living room. It was much bigger, and a man had just fallen out of it. This man said that he heard the woman in the house, Amber, repeating the same phrase over and over again, and Joshua could be seen falling below at this point. The maintenance worker quickly ushered Amber into the elevator and down to the lobby, the whole time fearing that he was in the elevator with a killer. Because what Amber continued to say out loud into the maintenance worker was that she pushed him. But as they got to the 8th floor, on top of the garage, they found a body there that proved that he was dead. Joshua had fallen 17 floors to his death. But did Amber push him on accident, or had this been planned? Had she just killed her husband, and had this maintenance worker witnessed the whole thing? Well, as Amber was crying over his body, screaming his name, telling the paramedics to fix him, they began assessing the scene to figure out how this happened. And shortly after, she was arrested for second-degree murder of her own husband. But at first, she was not thought of as being a killer or the cause of this. And in fact, one of the officers had taken her away from the scene simply because it was very hot. It was a very traumatic scene, and she was very pregnant, and he just didn't want her to go into an early labor or anything to happen to her too. So he ended up taking her down to the police station, as well as her grandma who met her there, just to kind of have a place away from the event while the investigators went through the whole scene. But when investigators heard the maintenance worker's statement about Amber saying that she pushed him, that's when they began to get suspicious about her. Detectives began to collect evidence of the crime scene. They were talking to witnesses. They were going into her apartment. And this is as Amber was put into an interrogation room to wait for them. Detectives were talking to neighbors, and one of which said that around the time that Joshua would have fallen, they heard footsteps, or what sounded like running from one side of the apartment to the other, which they thought was strange. They had never heard stuff like that coming from above before. But upon looking into the actual apartment, they saw no sign of a struggle other than, of course, the broken window. But they did find papers that added a whole new layer to this case. Now, Joshua was brought in for an autopsy, and his cause of death was ruled a homicide, but they couldn't exactly pinpoint how he fell out of the window, which way he was facing, which, could play a huge role in whether this was a suicide, an accident, or a homicide. However, 2 witnesses had seen him falling away from the building, so his face was actually out, looking out into the world and not facing the building as he fell. Another neighbor heard Amber screaming after the footsteps and then kind of the crash. There was a few seconds of silence, and then Amber began screaming, "No, no, no," and that's when the hysterics began. Investigators then were talking to Amber's parents, who had just arrived at the scene upon hearing all of this, and meanwhile, Amber was in this interrogation room with no other police officers. They were just waiting there, and she was talking to her grandmother. She believed everything she said was just being heard by her grandmother, or so we think. But her grandmother wasn't the only one who heard it. It is believed that they were completely unaware they were being recorded, but the police caught every single word. For the next hour, Amber spoke to her grandmother. She was crying, but she was slowly revealing what happened that day, or at least what she said happened. Now, I'm going to insert some footage here, and if you want to listen to the hour-long interrogation footage, I will link it down below. I did find it on YouTube, but I will insert kind of what I believe is the most important parts right here for you.
You know that. So you've got to fight for that one, and you got to fight for yourself.
But who fights for Josh?
He's in better. Listen to me. He's in God's.
He's gonna be fine.
Amber. He's in God's hands right now.
He's not supposed to be
No,
there.
he's not supposed to be, but he's in God's hands.
This isn't fair. But doesn't that make me guilty?
No, that makes the lawyer do his job. Because, baby, they will bring everything in.
But regardless, I'm going to jail.
That doesn't mean we're just doing your rights. You just don't understand how things work. You just don't say nothing till your attorney gets here. Okay?
So we're gonna be here for like hours.
Yeah, it'll probably be a long night. We're gonna poke
I just
you.
want to be with Josh.
They're
I just
gonna-
want to die.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Amber, you got that baby there.
But
That's
this is Josh's baby.
That's right, that's Josh's baby. That's the only thing that Josh has got is that baby.
He's supposed to be here. I'm such a bad person.
Amber.
No, I don't deserve to live. I don't deserve to be a mom. Josh deserves to be a dad. And Josh isn't even a person anymore.
You can't talk like that.
I'm so sorry.
And you can't talk like that in front of them. You gotta hold it together, baby.
I can't stop seeing Josh fall. I just want to be back in bed, laying with him. That's never gonna happen again. The person I couldn't even imagine being separated from is dead. I'm just trying to tell myself this isn't real and this is all gonna be over soon. Josh hates me. I'm not even gonna be able to meet him in heaven anymore because he just hates me. I killed him. What kind of person am I?
You're a loving person that has been abused by Josh just as well.
No, I'm a horrible person who could do that. Who could do that? Push my husband and make him fall out the window. I wish I could just go back and know that if I pushed him it was gonna happen.
Amber, quit saying you pushed him out the window. Did you intentionally?
No, of course not.
Okay, that's what they're gonna take it as, baby.
I just don't understand this whole...
Legal system.
No, not that. I don't understand the whole pattern of events of the last year. Us getting married and going to Alaska. Everything in Alaska, me being pregnant. Coming back here, getting kicked out of Mom's house, going to the apartment. And then all for it to Josh just fall out of a high-rise building. Watching him flail and think that he, my last thought was, please catch yourself. And I just want to know what was going through his head. if he knew he was gonna die. If he said a prayer, or if he cursed my name, or if he just thought that he could catch himself too, and then just watching him hit the ground.
Is there no balcony there from the living room?
No. For the rest of my life, everyone's gonna think I'm a murderer. My family, my whole family. I just want to go back. Please, I just want to go back and just not push him, just catch him, something. This can't be real. And now I'm gonna go to prison. And Josh is dead. My baby's gonna get taken away from me. Little Levi. He's gonna have to grow up without Dad. All because of me. I mean, I know what I have to do.
What is that? What do you have to do? You're gonna have to quit saying that.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
You didn't kill him, Amber.
I know, but it was an accident that went wrong, but because of me. I mean, I know I can't say those things. I know what I have to do to keep me and Levi safe.
But quite a bit of this interrogation footage is Amber kind of repeating those same things over and over. It was she can't believe that this happened, that she killed him, and that it keeps replaying in her head how he fell. She would often say that she wished she was dead instead of Joshua and that it should have been her. She said, "They were right. They kept saying if we stayed together, I would kill him." And the they she was referring to were Joshua's parents. But Amber said that that day before the fall, she was walking around picking up broken glass from the first window that broke. And she said that she wasn't saying anything mean to Joshua. She wasn't doing anything, but he was yelling at her. And she said she began to go cry in the bathroom so hard until she threw up. And that's when Joshua came in and told her that he wanted to be with her, but they needed to separate for a while first, and he was basically going to leave her. He was planning to leave. He had his bags packed by the door. He had plans to get a ride out of there, but Amber said she ended up shoving him against the wall when they were in a kind of like a fight, an altercation, and this was at the location where the window in the living room was. And before she knew what was happening, he was falling. He was stumbling backwards into the window. She said that as he was falling, she hoped that he would catch himself or at least, fall, break his leg, and survive. She also said she tried to catch him, grabbed his foot, but he was too heavy for her to hold up. Now, when investigators finally entered the room after getting back from the crime scene, she immediately told them that she wasn't supposed to talk to them because her mother was getting an attorney, and so they basically just got down some basic information and they left, and her grandmother was allowed to re-enter the room. However, in those few moments where she was alone, she actually began to talk to Joshua. Basically, I think up to the sky is what she was trying to do, kind of like as if he was in heaven, and she was saying that she loved him, she wanted him to come back. And after watching all of this footage and after hearing what Amber had to say, many believe that Amber was in shock, which is why she was whiny, which is why she wasn't really producing any tears even though she was technically crying, and why she acted so strange. Even her grandma says this in the footage because she asks why she's not crying. And her grandma says, "You are in shock," and she basically says she doesn't feel like she's in shock. However, people who are in shock can feel that way as well. But others believe that she was actually being very manipulative and trying yet failing to act innocent, like she didn't just kill her husband. This is a case that has people who are very much on one side or the other. However, I'm trying to present this case kind of in the middle to let you decide. Either way, all of this footage was being recorded and it became pretty incriminating evidence, and she was now being charged with first-degree murder, and her bail was set at $250,000. She gave a statement after this through her attorney that basically said that that day Joshua was getting upset with her because she was separating their laundry, taking his out, and she was going to do her own own laundry. She was upset at him because he kept saying he was going to leave her, so she was just going to do her own laundry. And then she said Joshua got upset about this, and he ended up throwing that laundry basket at the window, which was in their bedroom, which was the window that the maintenance worker was coming to fix. When the arguments didn't stop there, they began to kind of fight, kind of push each other back and forth. Joshua had his hands on her shoulders, and she said she didn't believe he was going to hurt her, but she did push him away to get him off of her, and he ended up falling backwards. Now at this point, of course, Joshua's family was contacted about this, and his father said as soon as he saw the officer at the door, he knew that Joshua was dead. But not only that, he knew that Amber had killed him, that she finally did it. Finally. In fact, Joshua was said to call his father that morning asking for a ride to their home because that's where he was going to stay for a little while they separated. And since his father couldn't, he ended up calling a few friends, and his friends were going to bring him instead. Joshua's whole family began to say that Joshua and Amber were in a pretty abusive relationship and that Joshua had wanted a divorce. That their whole relationship was rocky from the very beginning, but Joshua believed he could fix it. However, 3 months prior to his death, Joshua had also filed a restraining order against Amber. These were the papers I spoke about that were found inside of their apartment. This was an actual restraining order that he filed on May 10th at the Tulsa County District Court. Josh had told a judge that he went outside because Amber was crying and he tried to console her, but she yelled at him, and so he went back inside, and that is when she told him that he was going to sleep on the couch that night. He said okay, and then Amber proceeded to throw/push a floor lamp onto him, which ended up cutting his head open, and he needed 10 staples and 11 stitches. The paramedics even had to take him to the hospital. Josh's family actually said this wasn't the first time that Joshua had reported abuse to the police from Amber, but it was the only one that the Tulsa Police Department had, the only report, because they had lived in Alaska prior to this, and that is where the family said that the reports were done. Joshua said that Amber pushed his head into a corner one time, threw phones at him, steel-toe boots at him, threw him down the stairs. And the problem with this is that the restraining order was never made official because it was said neither Joshua nor Amber came to any of the court dates, so they threw it out. It was said that, Amber and Joshua had moved back home to Tulsa because Joshua had been discharged from the Air Force. He was getting ready to go back to school to become a registered nurse. And his family also said that he was a 6'6" man who was strong and athletic, and it would have showed on Amber if he was the one who attacked her first that day. Basically, she only had a few scratches on her and nothing else. Joshua's brother had a lot to say about their relationship. He said even on their wedding day, Amber was screaming at Joshua and basically kind of like bullying him in front of everybody. Like she didn't care, that it was embarrassing him. And on multiple occasions, he watched Joshua being hit and pinched by Amber, but every time Joshua would say that Amber was just immature, but she was actually a really nice girl. One thing I do want to point out with that is that a lot of the times people in domestic abuse situations will say that basically they'll try to put the blame on themselves, or they'll try to diminish the abuser from looking like an abuser because of being in a relationship with them and because they love them and they've been kind of put into this trauma bond with them and don't know how to get out. But at one point, Joshua's brother even got a call from Joshua saying that he wanted a divorce and he planned to get one, that Amber actually pushed him down the stairs, and Joshua's brother said he was crying on the phone, and that's the first time he ever heard his brother cry. Now, like I said, Joshua was wanting to get a divorce. However, he then told his brother that he was thinking about not doing it because Amber and her mother had gone over to him and basically made him feel bad for wanting to get the divorce because she was pregnant. Yet from Amber's family's point of view, they said that Joshua was the abusive one, that he was the one that she always had to file reports on in Alaska, and that there was only one report in Alaska filed for the abuse of Joshua from Amber. They said that he would hid her even when she was pregnant, and they said the real reason that Joshua was discharged from the Air Force was because he was heavily drinking and doing drugs. It was said by Amber's family that Joshua was addicted to Oxycontin prior to enlisting, and then he sobered up when he was in the Air Force. But they claimed that after being in Alaska for a while with Amber, he fell back into drugs again, and that's why he was kicked out. And they also said that Amber was only 5'5", and she was a very small girl, and they said there's no way she could have pushed such a big man out the window by herself. From the beginning, these families began to point the fingers at each other and say that it was the other person's fault. However, Amber did post bail at this point and was set free until her trial. Now, her attorney, who was Jason Corrin, said that this was basically a tragedy for all involved, for Joshua, who was now deceased, and for Amber, who was being charged with his murder, and for their son that was possibly not going to have any parents. Amber then began to blame self-defense on the death of her husband, and the prosecutors even came to her with a plea deal saying if she pled guilty, she could get about 5 years. However, she refused to take this, and that meant she could have been sentenced to way more than that, even life. But 6 months later, while they were still awaiting a trial, Amber was actually put back in jail when she could have been out on bail because she had failed the drug test. She had been found to have been doing marijuana, and she also was forgetting to charge her ankle monitor. At this point, her family was also filing a wrongful death lawsuit for Joshua Hilberling against the apartments due to their weak windows. They believed that the windows were dangerous and not safe to actually be living there. During her trial that started in March of 2003, which was 2 years after the death, Amber began to blame the weak windows on the death, and she faulted them entirely, and she said that they were unusually thin for an apartment. She said she simply acted in self-defense as Joshua grabbed her, and then he kind of tripped over his own big feet out the window. But something that a lot of people noticed was that her voice changed while she was talking on the stand, from just a normal talking voice to almost like a whisper, and this was not common for her to do. And some believed that these whispered statements were kind of rehearsed or like a tactic for persuasion, and it made her appear a little bit guilty. A witness testified that Amber had told them she tried to grab his foot, but he was too heavy to hold. And then the footage of Amber and her grandmother talking was shown at court as well, shown to the jury. And another witness, who was actually the manager of the apartments, testified, saying that they saw Amber when she had first come down to the lobby after this whole accident had happened. And she wasn't angry. She wasn't in an aggressive state. In fact, she was sobbing, and the manager told her to shut up. And instead of yelling back or being aggressive towards him, she curled up into a ball and started crying. Then an inmate would testify, saying that she was cellmates with Amber, and that Amber had told her that she caught Joshua off guard and killed him. However, this inmate was a known liar and had 20 felony convictions, so they couldn't be too much of a reliable source. Now, Court Junkie Podcast did a wonderful episode on this, kind of focusing more on the trial. I will have them linked down below. But the defense basically decided to go the route of blaming the glass in the apartment, and they also called a window expert. And this person testified that the glass in the building was about the same glass used in a picture frame. It was that thin. However, another glass specialist came in and said that that was normal glass for high rises. But the trial wasn't about the glass. It wasn't about, getting money from the apartment or blaming the apartment. It was about if Amber had done this or not. And the jury deliberated for 3 hours and came back with a guilty verdict. She was sentenced to 25 years and a $10,000 fine. Amber looked shocked, and she was ushered away and taken to the Mabel Bissett Correctional Center. Amber had actually given birth to her son by this time, and Levi, which was his name, was now a toddler and being looked after by Amber's mother. Amber, then being sentenced, claimed in an interview that she didn't originally take the plea deal, which would have given her only 5 years, because she had faith in the justice system and didn't believe that anybody would find her guilty of murder. However, she said even though she was found guilty and given 25 years, she didn't regret not taking the plea deal. Now, Amber planned to appeal her case and continue interviewing to get her story out there, saying that she was innocent. And she was even filming a documentary series called Women Who Kill, where she said that her and Joshua were both young and selfish at the time, and if they would have been older, she believed they would have had a happily ever after. She said, "I've never tried to make it sound like he is the big bad wolf and I'm Little Red Riding Hood that is running for her life. It wasn't like that." Then, 3 years into her sentence, on October 24th, 2016, Amber was found hanging in her cell. Her cause of death was ruled a suicide, and when her family heard about this, they immediately began to say that this was no suicide, it had to be a murder. That Amber wouldn't have done that. She wanted to live for her baby boy. She looked forward to it, and this seemed kind of like a stretch, like a family who didn't want to believe it after all that they had been through. However, then something was found that made people believe that this could have been the case. You see, a local news station had reached out to Amber prior to her death, asking her if she wanted to do an interview. And Amber had written them back a day before she died. She said she did want to do an interview. She wanted to get her story out there. The only problem was she was a little worried because reporters were kind of twisting her words and coming out with stories that she didn't like, but she said that she was ready to be interviewed again if they wanted to. Many thought it was strange that she was so eager to do this interview, and yet a day later she took her own life. She had even written, "I can't let go of the hope that using my voice in conversations about my own life will be the one and only chance I have to share the circumstances of my own reality." At this point, a second wrongful death lawsuit was filed from Amber's mother for her death against the Oklahoma Department of Corrections. It was actually said that the jail she was in had no security cameras that were working the day she died, and security was lenient in general for the inmates. Now, her family really believes that the justice system failed Amber from the very beginning and that she should have never been in jail in the first place. Today, Amber and Joshua's son Levi would be 9 years old, and he is said to be an adorable, happy little boy. However, he does understand the extent of what happened to his family because of the news, and he really struggles with this and figuring out the truth and understanding why this happened. He is able to visit his parents' graves every month, but it makes you think about the whole thing. If this really was an accident, he lost his father in a split second, and then his mother the next second, all because of something that didn't have to occur, that shouldn't have. But at the same time, if this was murder, Joshua and his family deserved that justice. This case is mind-boggling to say the least. I mean, do you believe she was guilty of murder? Did she want her husband dead? And if so, what was her motive? Was it that Joshua was trying to leave her, or was it something to do with the hormones of her pregnancy? Also, do you think that she was really in shock at the police station, or was she trying to cover up what she had done with her statements and crying? I really wonder if you think the windows have anything to do with this, if they are at fault for all of this. Were they too weak to be so high up? I mean, what I kind of wanted to talk about was the fact that Joshua was said to throw the hamper and break the first window. If a hamper could break a window that easily, it does make you wonder if they were far too weak. Did all these things just combine in a horrible tragedy that was just never supposed to occur? I actually found an article called ChicagoWindowExpert.com that went into the windows on this building. This is a man named Mark Meshalom, and he wrote that the building and glass was around 46 years old at the time, that there were layers of caulking that were unprofessionally applied at the edges. He said that the area around the windows were badly worn, and it appeared as though somebody had just applied caulking over it many, many times to try to fix it. And the glass was less than 1/8 of an inch thick, which is known as single strength, and he says is too weak to be used in windows. He also said that the glass was annealed and non-safety instead of what they would have used or what they were supposed to use, which was laminated safety glass. He was basically explaining that laminated glass would hold if it was broken because it would still stay in place. Even if broken, it wouldn't completely just fly out and about. It would still have that barrier there. But annealed glass, I think that's how you say it, would completely disperse like the window did. Mark said he believes that this domestic dispute brought Josh in contact with this weak, unsafe glass, and the glass caused his death. But I would really love to know what you think about all of that, and especially if you know anything about glass. I, of course, don't, but I thought that was interesting to put in a little segment from somebody who supposedly knows what he's talking about. But my next question for you is, do you think she really took her own life? She was saying many times in the police station that she wanted to die and that she would never let it leave her and she would always think about it. But the fact that she sent the letter a day prior to reporters saying she wanted to interview just makes it quite strange that she would do it the next day. Now, I did find a Facebook group that says "In Loving Memory of Amber Hilberling," and this is basically a community of people who believe she was innocent of murder and that she was murdered. They said that they had a statement from one of Amber's friends who was an inmate at the same time as her, who said that everyone inside with Amber believed that she was innocent of murder, that she could have never done this, and that her death was also not a suicide. They said that in fact that day Amber was very excited because her attorney told her that she could be getting out sooner than expected. So they didn't believe that she did this whole 180 and suddenly took her life. She also constantly talked about Levi and getting back to him and being able to see him. Now, this same page also claimed that there was an inmate named Patricia Rucker, or she went by T. Rucker, who told Amber to go kill herself that day. And apparently T. Rucker, they said, was in prison for strangling her girlfriend 20 years prior, and she was kind of an aggressive person. Many believed that T. Rucker killed Amber by putting a hair straightener cord around her neck and hanging her. And allegedly there were claw marks on Amber's neck. However, there are no photographs of this that kind of showed that she was trying to get the cord off of herself. However, I tried to do some research into this, and the only Patricia Rucker I could find at this specific jail around this time was a woman who had ended up shooting her roommate named Melvin Maxey after an argument with her, and they were kind of wrestling around and the gun went off and shot her roommate in the temple. So I don't know if these are supposed to be the same people. I don't know if information was mixed up. I don't know if any of that is true at all. It is just something I wanted to bring to you as, you know, some information that is out there and for you to decide, because we don't know and we probably never will know since it did happen in jail. I wanted to add all the sides that I could of this very strange story to help you get a full picture and not one that is super focused on one side or the other. And one thing I do want to touch on, regardless of what you believe happened in this case, is that domestic violence against men can happen. And I don't want that to be not focused on, because any men watching this, I don't want them to suddenly think that just because I was talking about the fact that, you know, Amber's family said that he was the one abusing her and that, you know, she never abused him. I just feel like lots of men in these situations are not told that their feelings are valid or their pain is valid or what they're going through is not okay, because lots of people see women as weaker and as not capable of doing something like this, but it can come from both sides. And I'm not saying that Joshua was the one abusing. I'm not saying Amber was the one abusing. I don't know. But what I am saying is that men who are abused need to be listened to as well. I think some domestic violence cases get so bad that it ends up both people go after each other and they just don't know how to get out of this toxic cycle where they're harming each other and trying to stay safe, and it's just horrible regardless. But I really do want to know what you think about this case, and I'm not trying to put blame on anybody. Amber was in jail. I don't know. You know, some things make you want to believe that it was all an accident, and then some things make you think maybe she did do it. So, I don't know. Feel free to tell me your thoughts down below. And, you know, if you have any more cases like this that you want me to do where I just kind of try to get all sides, because I think some solved cases, I mean, you have one side that you know of because, of course, you know what the end goal is going to be. So you can kind of backtrack, or I can, when I'm researching and find the information that makes sense for that, because of course we know the killer. But in cases like this, it is hard, and especially because this case was so publicized in the media. Even Dr. Phil has a podcast about it, and so many people have opinions on it. But I hope I did an okay job, And yeah, don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.